As women grow older, wisdom and grace often shine through. But like anyone, certain habits can develop with age that may make others uncomfortable, even if no one dares to mention them. These behaviors are rarely talked about openly, yet they're more common than we think. Let's explore 10 such habits one by one with understanding and honesty. 1. Excessive complaining about health. As women age, it's natural to experience more health concerns. Aches, pains, doctor visits, and medications become part of daily life. But when health becomes the central topic of every conversation, it can start to weigh heavily on others. Constant complaining, especially when it's repetitive or dramatic, can make family members and friends feel overwhelmed, guilty, or helpless. It might also cause people to avoid interactions altogether, not because they don't care, but because they feel powerless to help or exhausted by the negativity. This habit often stems from a real need for empathy, validation, and attention, but it can come across as self-centered or emotionally draining. The discomfort isn't about the health issues themselves, but how frequently and intensely they're presented in social settings. Everyone deserves to be heard, especially when facing genuine challenges. However, there's a difference between sharing and oversharing. It's important to remember that conversation is a two-way street. Dominating it with complaints can unintentionally signal that others' lives and problems are less important. In the long run, this creates emotional distance. Younger generations, especially, might feel like they can't relate or engage meaningfully when every visit turns into a list of ailments or medical updates. Balancing vulnerability with curiosity about others' lives can keep relationships strong and uplifting. Sharing health concerns in moderation, while also showing interest in what others are experiencing, helps maintain connection and mutual respect. This shift doesn't mean silencing pain. It means expressing it in a way that invites care without causing emotional fatigue. 2. Unsolicited advice and overbearing opinions. With age comes experience, and many older women have lived through situations that younger people are just beginning to face. Naturally, they often want to share their wisdom, offer guidance, or help others avoid mistakes. While the intention is usually good, it can cross a line into giving unsolicited advice or expressing strong opinions in ways that feel intrusive or controlling. This becomes uncomfortable when advice is given without being asked, or when it's repeated even after someone has gently declined. What may feel like caring guidance to the older woman might come across as judgmental or dismissive to the person receiving it, especially if it's about personal topics like parenting, career choices, appearance, or relationships. The challenge is not in the advice itself, but in how it's delivered. If it's shared with a tone of authority or criticism, it can make others feel belittled or misunderstood. Younger adults may begin to avoid conversations or emotionally pull away, fearing that every interaction will turn into a lecture. Over time, this can create resentment or distance in relationships. It's also common for older women to hold firm views shaped by a different era. While there's nothing wrong with having strong values, insisting on them without listening to others' perspectives can lead to tension. This can make others feel as though there's no space for growth, change, or different ways of living. A more effective approach is to wait for the right moment. Ask if advice is wanted before giving it. Show curiosity and openness instead of certainty. Often, just listening with empathy and encouragement can have a much greater impact than offering solutions. Relationships thrive when people feel heard, not fixed. 3. Gossiping and spreading negativity. As people grow older and their social circles change, conversations often become one of the most common ways to stay connected. Unfortunately, for some older women, gossip becomes a frequent part of those conversations. It may start as casual chatter, commenting on a neighbor's behavior, a family member's decisions, or what someone wore to an event. But when this kind of talk turns negative or persistent, it can make others deeply uncomfortable. Gossip may provide a temporary sense of importance, entertainment, or control, It can even serve as a way to bond with others over shared opinions. However, the downside is that it often erodes trust and respect. When an older woman constantly talks about others behind their backs, people may start wondering what she says about them when they're not around. This creates an atmosphere of tension and caution, especially among younger generations who tend to value privacy, emotional safety, and kindness in communication. Moreover, constant negative talk about others can shape the emotional tone of every gathering. Instead of feeling warm and welcoming, conversations start to feel critical or judgmental. Friends and family may start limiting their visits, not because they don't care, but because they leave feeling emotionally drained or even hurt. This habit is rarely driven by malice. It often stems from boredom, loneliness, or a need for connection. But there are healthier ways to fulfill those needs, like asking meaningful questions, sharing personal stories, or focusing on common interests. Uplifting conversations build stronger bonds than gossip ever could. To shift away from gossip, it helps to become more aware of the language being used. Are the words building someone up or tearing them down? Are we sharing something that's kind, true, and necessary, or just filling silence with speculation? Creating a more positive and respectful space for conversation allows relationships to deepen and grow. 4. Clinging to the past and resisting change. As the world rapidly evolves, social norms, technology, communication styles, it's natural to feel overwhelmed or disconnected from it all. Many older women understandably hold on to the values, routines, and lifestyles they grew up with. But when that attachment turns into constant comparisons or outright rejection of the present, it can create friction with those around them. This habit often shows up in statements like, "Things were better in my day," or "Young people have no idea how to live right." While it might seem harmless, these comments can feel dismissive to others, especially younger generations who are simply trying to navigate life on their own terms. It can also shut down conversations and make loved ones feel judged or unappreciated for the ways they've adapted to modern life. Whether it's criticizing new parenting methods, complaining about technology, or expressing discomfort with changing social values, a refusal to accept the present moment can come across as close-minded. This makes others feel like they're walking on eggshells, avoiding certain topics or hiding parts of their lives to avoid confrontation or disapproval. At its core, clinging to the past is often about a deeper emotional need for security, identity, and control in a world that feels unfamiliar. But instead of creating connection, it builds walls. Relationships thrive on openness, curiosity, and shared understanding, not nostalgia that turns into bitterness or denial. This doesn't mean giving up cherished traditions or beliefs. It simply means making space for growth, yours and others. Embracing small aspects of modern life, asking questions instead of rejecting ideas, and celebrating what's good today can lead to richer, more inclusive relationships. Change is not always easy, but staying open to it keeps the heart young. 5. Emotional manipulation through guilt. As people age, emotional bonds with family often deepen, but sometimes, older women unintentionally use guilt as a tool to maintain those bonds or influence the behavior of others. This can take the form of passive-aggressive remarks, silent treatments, or repeated reminders of past sacrifices made for children, spouses, or friends. While these behaviors may not be intentional or malicious, they can create discomfort and emotional strain in relationships. Guilt-based communication often sounds like, "I guess I'm just not important to you anymore," or "I raised you and this is how I'm treated." Statements like these are designed, consciously or not, to provoke a sense of obligation or shame, rather than fostering open dialogue. When repeated over time, this pattern can lead to resentment, avoidance, or emotional withdrawal from those on the receiving end. This habit typically comes from a place of deep emotional need. As roles shift in older age, from caregiver to dependent, from the center of the family to someone who now needs more support, it's easy to feel forgotten or less valued. but trying to reclaim attention or influence through guilt often backfires. It may get short-term compliance, but it erodes long-term trust and warmth. Instead of using guilt, expressing feelings directly and vulnerably is much more powerful. Saying, "I miss you and would love to see you more often," is far more effective and loving than, "You never visit me." People respond better when they feel invited, not cornered. Everyone deserves to feel loved and remembered, especially in older age. But nurturing that love comes from honest, healthy communication, not emotional pressure. When older women share their needs without manipulation, they create an environment where others feel safe, respected, and eager to stay connected. 6. Lack of boundaries and over-involvement in family matters. Many older women feel a strong sense of responsibility and connection to their families, often having spent much of their lives caring for children, spouses, or extended relatives. As they age, this caregiving instinct doesn't disappear, but sometimes it shifts into a pattern of over-involvement in the lives of adult children or other family members. While well-intentioned, this behavior can become intrusive and make others feel suffocated or disrespected. Examples include showing up unannounced, insisting on being part of every decision, meddling in parenting choices, or pushing for details about private issues. Though these actions are often framed as just trying to help, they can violate personal boundaries. When people feel their space is constantly invaded or their autonomy questioned, they may become distant, not out of disrespect, but in an effort to protect their own emotional balance. Older women may struggle with this shift because their identities have long been tied to their roles within the family. Watching their children become fully independent can feel like a loss of purpose or relevance. This can lead to a tendency to stay involved in ways that used to be helpful, but now feel controlling or unnecessary. It's important to recognize that love doesn't require constant presence or input. In fact, respecting others' independence is one of the most powerful expressions of love. Checking in is different from checking up. Offering help is different from assuming it's needed. And giving advice is different from taking over. Healthy boundaries go both ways. Just as older women deserve respect and kindness, younger family members deserve space to grow, make their own choices, and even make mistakes. When older women practice stepping back gracefully, they often find that others step forward with greater appreciation and openness. 7. Neglecting personal hygiene and appearance. As energy levels decline and health issues increase with age, maintaining personal hygiene and grooming routines can become more difficult. Tasks that once felt effortless, like showering regularly, brushing hair, choosing clean clothes, or wearing deodorant, may start to feel like burdens. For some older women, especially those living alone or dealing with limited mobility, these habits slowly begin to fade. Unfortunately, this change can lead to discomfort for those around them, even if no one wants to say it out loud. People may notice strong body odors, unwashed clothing, or long untrimmed nails and hair. They may feel hesitant to comment out of fear of offending or embarrassing the person. Yet the discomfort remains, quietly impacting how others interact. Friends or family members might begin keeping visits shorter or avoiding physical closeness, not out of cruelty, but because the situation has become unpleasant. This isn't about vanity. Personal hygiene is closely linked to dignity, confidence, and emotional well-being. When it's neglected, it often signals deeper issues, such as depression, cognitive decline, chronic pain, or feelings of isolation. In some cases, the woman may no longer even realize that her appearance or hygiene has changed significantly. In others, she may feel that it no longer matters, especially if she no longer works, socializes often, or feels seen. The truth is, self-care is not just for the young. Older women deserve to feel clean, comfortable, and proud of their appearance at every stage of life. Maintaining grooming routines, even in small ways, helps preserve a sense of control and personal pride. It also shows respect not only for oneself, but for those who live and interact closely. Offering gentle, loving support or assistance can make a big difference. Encouraging self-care, helping with tasks when needed, or even planning grooming appointments together can be a way to maintain connection and dignity without shame. 8. Using outdated or offensive language without awareness. Over time, language evolves. Words and phrases that were once common in everyday speech may now be considered inappropriate, offensive, or insensitive. Many older women continue to use language that reflects the norms of the time they grew up in, often without any intent to harm. However, when these outdated expressions surface in conversation, especially around younger generations or diverse groups, they can cause discomfort or even offense. Examples include comments about race, gender roles, sexual orientation, weight, or disability that would have gone unchallenged decades ago, but are now recognized as harmful or discriminatory. Even seemingly casual remarks like, "She doesn't look like one of us," or "Back in my day, we didn't have all these labels," can feel dismissive or exclusionary to others. This habit isn't necessarily rooted in prejudice. More often, it stems from a lack of awareness or an assumption that everyone talks like this, or that people are just too sensitive nowadays. But what feels like harmless nostalgia to one person can sound deeply hurtful or tone-deaf to another. The discomfort arises when others are put in the position of deciding whether to correct the speaker, ignore the comment, or leave the conversation. Over time, people may begin to avoid difficult topics, or the older person altogether, to avoid uncomfortable moments. It's important to remember that learning and growth don't stop at a certain age. Choosing to update language is not about giving in to trends. It's about showing respect for others' identities and experiences. A simple willingness to ask questions, listen, and adapt shows emotional intelligence and keeps communication open and meaningful. Nobody expects perfection, but openness to change speaks volumes. When older women acknowledge that times have changed and make an effort to grow with them, they become role models of wisdom, grace, and respect. 9. Playing the victim in every situation. As people age, it's natural to reflect on life's hardships, lost opportunities, health issues, or strained relationships. But when this reflection turns into a constant pattern of victimhood, it can create tension and emotional discomfort in others. Some older women may frequently frame themselves as always being misunderstood, mistreated, or unappreciated, even in ordinary conversations. This can shift every discussion into a narrative where they are the wronged party, regardless of the context. Statements like, "No one ever helps me," "People only visit when they need something," or "I've always been the one left out," are often said with the hope of being seen, heard, or validated. But when these sentiments are repeated again and again, they can make others feel emotionally manipulated or emotionally responsible for feelings they didn't cause. The victim mindset can also create a subtle expectation that others should constantly comfort, apologize, or make up for past hurts. Over time, this emotional dynamic wears down relationships. Friends and family may begin to feel like nothing they do is ever enough. Eventually, they may choose silence or distance rather than facing another round of blame or guilt. This behavior often has deeper roots, sometimes tied to unresolved pain, loneliness, or a need for control in a world that feels increasingly uncertain. The desire to be seen and understood is real, but the strategy of victimhood can end up pushing people away rather than drawing them close. What helps is a shift in focus, from what's missing or unfair to what's still possible. Practicing gratitude, asking for support directly, and acknowledging others' efforts, even small ones, can transform interactions. Life may not have been easy, but choosing resilience over resentment makes space for joy, connection, and mutual respect. 10. Refusing to acknowledge personal growth in others. One subtle yet uncomfortable habit some older women develop is the inability, or refusal, to recognize and respect how much the people around them have changed. This can come from a fixed view of family roles, long-held opinions about who someone has always been, or difficulty adjusting to others' maturity and independence. Whether it's a child who has grown into a responsible adult, a grandchild exploring new beliefs, or a friend who's evolved, not acknowledging that growth can feel dismissive or even insulting. Phrases like, "You'll always be my little girl," may seem affectionate, but when paired with criticism or disregard for adult decisions, they can send the message that someone's maturity isn't seen or valued. Dismissing career choices, modern parenting methods, or new ways of thinking as wrong, or just a phase, sends the signal that only the older woman's way is valid. This often leads to friction, emotional distance, or silence in relationships. This habit usually isn't rooted in ill will. It often comes from a place of fear of being left behind, of losing relevance, or of being disconnected from a changing world. But when others feel like they must keep proving themselves or hide parts of their growth to maintain peace, relationships become strained. People want to be seen not just for who they were, but for who they are now. The truth is, honoring someone's evolution doesn't take anything away from one's own experience. In fact, it strengthens bonds. When an older woman shows respect for the progress, identity, and choices of those around her, it creates mutual dignity. Saying, "I may not fully understand your path, but I respect it," can be a powerful act of love. Growth is not just for the young. The ability to recognize and celebrate change in others, even when it challenges your own worldview, is one of the clearest signs of wisdom. It keeps connections alive, dynamic, and rooted in true respect. If you found this video thoughtful or helpful, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more honest and meaningful conversations.